Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast. You're very welcome to our Monday review show. We have a lot to cover today. We have Maurice Brosnan from the Irish Examiner coming up later in the show. He's going to give a detailed account of all the games that happened over the weekend. We also have 3 interviews with the three Ulster teams that were involved. We have Michael Langan of Donegal, Malachy O'Rourke of Kieran Kieran McGeeney of Armagh. So we're going to hear them in a wee bit too. It's just myself and Mal McMullen this morning, so we're going to give an overview of the weekend. And Mal, I know we were very excited about the weekend. There was a lot of people very excited about the games that were coming up. What did you make of it? Did it live up to expectations?
It probably did, from the point of view there was a novel thing about it. I think probably Meath probably brought loads of colour and that whole energy of being there for the first time in a while. And I went down and stayed over and I was going in and out in the train, and there was loads of excitement. And I suppose Tyrone coming and beating Dublin was a big result. I felt that Dublin were probably marginal favourites, although it was 50-50. I just felt that maybe Tyrone were that wee bit more inconsistent than Dublin were. But in the end, Tyrone controlled it, I felt. So I enjoyed the weekend, albeit the football wasn't through the roof, I didn't think. But in terms of just having all the games on the one weekend, you're able to see it. You're able to see loads of scores. And probably the disappointing thing, I suppose, from our point of view, and obviously more for you, Sean, we didn't get our 3 out of 4 Ulster teams that could potentially have happened. And I have to admit, I felt that Armagh, I felt would win. It's not a massive shock at Kerry won, but I just felt Armagh were well placed. And then obviously I fancied Donegal to win it. Actually, only one of the tips that I got right, but I fancied them to win it. And like they were 7 points down in their game, and I watched Saturday's games from the hill, so you have a completely different view of things, and it gives you a great insight into kickouts. Through the afternoon, it definitely did. But I remember just thinking when I looked up at the scoreboard at half time, like Monaghan had won 15, and I thought to myself, like I'd done that wee study last week of their attacking play. I remember thinking like Conor McCarthy missed a couple of chances at the other end, and they won 15. I thought to myself, like they're in a really good position. And the other thing, Sean, I remember just focusing on Jim McGuinness. That when you're in the first game at Croke Park, the managers have to walk across the pitch. I just remember thinking, they're 7 points down. There's the 3 games 3 weeks in a row, and they're Ulster champions. And you're thinking to yourself, what's going on inside that head? Because you don't have that long to gather your thoughts. But as you'll probably hear from Jim in the interview later on, he talked about it didn't change an awful lot. Sorry, it's Michael Langan in the interview, but I was listening to Jim over the weekend. But they didn't change an awful lot. It was as if we'll leave it up to the players. But I can't imagine there wasn't any. I can't imagine there wasn't a hairdryer pulled out somewhere. But they just had a lot more bite after half time. Michael Langan's goal was obviously significant. It was his 100th game, and what a moment to score your goal. Like last week, I had mentioned to Jim the fact that Kieran Thompson has scored a goal in his 50th ever appearance in a row, and he joked. He says, "Sure, it'll be Michael Langan's turn next week," and so it was. And he actually joked to Ryan Ferry. He says, "Did you back it, Ryan?" And Ryan says, "No," and Jim says, "I didn't either." So that was a big moment. And another small thing that I noticed was one of Monaghan's kickouts in the first and early stages of the second half went right down on top of Kieran Moore, and he came and won it. A small moment, but just a time when things started to change. So things like that there that began to happen for Donegal. And then from the Donegal side of things, I just remember seeing the big screen, the face in Sean Patton when he was blown up for taking too long on the kick out. And I think he had conceded the goal at that stage. I'm really sure he did.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
he just had a really blank expression. And that's why I was sort of looking at Jim at half time and you're thinking to yourself, what's that dressman going to be like? Because the second half, you can say that it was a collapse from Monaghan, and it probably wasn't the fact that they'll have so many regrets, Sean, they didn't push on. But I think that I always say, and I've always said it on here, I think the story always has to be about the winner in that situation. Like, Jim and the Donegal management team, the group, they went at it, and obviously Langan's goal was a big moment, but they didn't seem to panic. And then they obviously had that size around the middle, and Hugh McFadden and Jason McGee and Murphy, and they just had enough, and they ended up, it was a very, very comfortable one, and it leaves them in a really good situation, because they were the last team into the draw, they were the first team out, and then they're actually the first team into the semi-finals, so they're able to sit back in the armchair and see what's coming. So no, I really enjoyed it. And then obviously like Tyrone was, it's sort of difficult, Sean, the Tyrone one, because some people thought that Dublin kicked themselves out of it. I never thought Tyrone would lose once. I always say the first couple of minutes can tell a lot. And I remember just looking from the hill, and a kick out landed into Kieran McGeeney, and then Morgan started to go short, and he had so much variation. And I just felt that Dublin he picked them apart. There's a couple of Dublin fans behind me, and I don't think we could say on air here what they were saying, but they were completely lambasting their team, to be honest. I saw two sides of the hill. There's a family to my left, and they were all into it. They were following the game. They followed Donegal. They were asking why McBrearty wasn't on. They were just Gaels. But with about 5 minutes to throw in, there's a crowd landed up behind us, and what they didn't shout, it was just disgraceful, to be honest. But thankfully, it didn't represent everybody in the hill. But as I say, then Tyrone, they seemed to have control. And I remember at one stage looking up at the scoreboard, and they were only a point up later on, and I thought it's actually convincing. And Sean, like Dublin did have a couple of goal chances. I think both of them were Cormac Costello. But to be fair to Niall Morgan, he had his angles covered both times.
Right, brilliant. Yeah.
He had his angles covered both times, and like on a couple of Dublin's missed chances, they went up, and Peter Tague kicked, I think, his 2-pointer, but then 4-1 up. Then there's another one, and you might say that the 2-pointers, and they did give Tyrone a hand. There's no doubt about that. But whenever you're at the game, you just get a feeling for it. And once I saw the early kickouts working for Tyrone, whenever I saw the fact that Dublin carried it so far and didn't seem to want to go into the game, bar Niall Scully and a couple of kick passes, I didn't think they ever looked like losing. Tyrone never looked like losing. So that's my synopsis of Saturday.
The Tyrone one, Mal, I just watching on from the telly, I wasn't at it, but it felt like a throwback to the noughties Tyrone, just their intensity and their tackling and their double ups and everything. Like and I was laughing at looking on. You had Niall Morgan, you had Peter Tague, you had Monty Donnelly, you had Padraig Compsey, all with the beards. And it felt like the beards are back, Tyrone's back to their best from the noughties, but just got that sense that that mad aggression that you associate from the noughties team. Like I thought it was there as well, and just hunting in packs.
Aye, definitely. And I was chatting to him for Morris briefly after the games yesterday, and I actually says to him, like, Kerry had a wee bit of anger about them. Like, but Tyrone, I wouldn't say they were angry, but they just had that real desire. And Kieran McGeeney probably summed it up, and a bit flicking back to the Donegal game where like Shawnee O'Donnell was celebrating a turnover, and celebrating a goal, and I just, there was a moment, I think Niall Devlin kicked them 14-11 up, and it was just in front of me in the hill, and I just remember sort of seeing his face when he celebrated, and I just thought to myself, they're like exactly as you say, they're really, really on it. And as much as Dublin had chances, without Con, they didn't have a cutting edge. And I was chatting to a couple of Tyrone people in Mars afterwards at Barry Tierney and Stevie McNeese. I don't know if they got, Barry Tracy and Stevie McNeese. I don't know if they got home in time. I don't know what way they got home, but we were having this discussion about it, and they felt like we're all talking about like Tyrone didn't fire. You know, if you were going down the road and thinking that Dara Canavan and Darren McCurry aren't going to shoot the lights out, you would worry. But Dublin didn't have that either. You know, and as you say, then whenever Tyrone were able to control the game, they were never really going to lose it.
On Sunday, Mal, unfortunately, we'll have to talk about it and talk about it from an Armagh point of view. But I suppose we're talking about Saturday and Monaghan's sort of collapse in the second half. Like Armagh at the start of the second half, like 5 points up, I think they went. Rain kicked a 2-pointer, McMullen and Connery kicked a point each. Like they were looking good. And there was just that killer 15-minute spell where Kerry just absolutely dominated. Like dominated the kickouts, dominated on the scoreboard. And I was saying the offer, like it just felt every time Kerry come forward, it was either a point or 2 points. They didn't miss inside that period, and it went from Armagh being 5 up to being 5, 6, 7, 8 down very, very quickly. And it was just impossible for them. Just couldn't get the hands on the ball, and it's so disappointing from an Armagh point of view. But I think, you know, that team has given Armagh fans some thrill over the last couple of years. Haven't always got what they deserved out of it in terms of a few penalty shootout defeats and stuff, but the thrill that Armagh fans have got out of that team has been unbelievable. And I don't mean to say that as in, you know, it's over and not retiring boys here this morning or anything, but it's a disappointing way for, I suppose, for Armagh to surrender Sam and for the year to end for Armagh.
It is, because going into the game, one of the reasons why I felt that Armagh would win was they were always a 7 out of 10. You know, they never had a poor performance, and sometimes weren't always brilliant, but they just had the right people in the right places. And like, even I was chatting to Kieran Lynch before it, and he says if we can stay in it, you know, we'll not be far away. He says if we can stay in. I remember thinking to myself, you know, I don't see any reason why you won't. But that's what Armagh brought. They brought a level of consistency, and I think that's what will really disappoint them today. Obviously, losing to All-Ireland and going out of the championship is away at the top of the tree. But you know, they'll obviously, as you always do, you always digest it, you always dissect the defeats that wee bit more. But that has to hurt. And I suppose in that spell, like as I says to you, Sean, like there was a 15-minute spell, and I don't remember Armagh having the ball for more than 4 or 5 times. And if you think back to last year, and even this year, a lot of the games where Armagh were there or thereabouts, and even the ones where they didn't win, and over this past couple of years, they had loads of possession, and they still found it difficult. Whereas yesterday, they simply could not get the ball. And as you say, like Kerry couldn't miss. They just didn't miss. And I suppose you had David Clifford missed a couple of chances early on, and you thought Armagh was in a decent position. Shawnee O'Shea was on fire. I think he 12 points in all. Armagh's goal, Grugan just buried it, and you're thinking to yourself, has it started to turn here? But I think Shawnee O'Shea had nearly 5. Kerry had 5 points nearly right away. Shawnee had a 2-pointer, so that goal was nearly gone. But still, when the hooter went, Sean, and this is where I sort of thought Armagh might be in a good position, and you sort of touched on it. When the hooter went, they had one more play, and they worked it very, very well. The wee pocket in front of the goals was free. You could see them calling all the boys up to the inside the 21, and Joe McElroy put them a point up, and I thought, there's a rehearsed move. They've went in a point up. They had a chance to regroup, and they did. Like I think it was 116 to 114. And then, unfortunately, from Armagh's point of view, that 116 didn't change for a long time. And like Paddy Clifford came in, and David started to really, really tick. And like the Kerry fans, there was more Kerry people there, but you could hear them. You know, you could hear them. And at one stage, David Clifford had scored, and you could just see him going like this to the crowd, and it just lifted it another level again. And I suppose you can talk about, and it's probably, Sean, a wee bit on like the Monaghan situation the day before. Like they put what looked like 4 and then 3 along the middle on Patton's kickouts, and then you had Rory Beggan behind that. And from the angle on the hill, you're thinking, how does Sean Patton able to get it out? And that's what really frustrated him. And it was something similar with Armagh. And as I said to you earlier on, it probably got to the stage where Armagh just needed to kick it as hard and as fast away from goal as possible. And it might not have won them the game, but even if they had lost a break ball and the opposition 45 and got bodies in around it, and all of a sudden, you can sort of sneak 2 or 3 points into the middle of that, you're still in it. But they weren't able to do that. It was like, and I just remember looking around Croke Park and seeing all the orange colour, and you're thinking the fans just need something here. They just need something to latch onto, and the team needed, and that didn't come, and it left them. That's just it leaves them in that really disappointing defeat now, where they've won out without a real fight. As much as they kept battling, that 15-minute spell, like the damage was done, unfortunately, from Armagh's point of view.
Yeah, it was devastating from an Armagh point of view, but I suppose, as I said, you said, well, they kept battling, they kept working as hard as they could, which, that's all you can ask for. And I think the amount of tough defeats Armagh have had, and the amount of 1-point defeats and penalties and extra time and everything, at least yesterday, they were by far second best on the day, which, I don't know, there's a comfort in that nearly, Mal, that you can come away and hold your hands up and just say, okay, we're better on the day, while then penalty defeats, you're always going back to 1 or 2 moments. Yesterday there was, 100 moments, okay, we're just better.
And on those other days, it's maybe somebody's fault for a mistake or a refereeing decision, whereas this one's completely different. And probably to put the tin hat on it, Sean, whenever Armagh were battling to get a goal, Kerry looked like a team that had no interest in conceding a late goal, conceding anything. They were just throwing bodies on the line. Now, they were all half chances, but they were throwing bodies on it, and you just got the impression that you would love to have been in Kerry's camp the week before to see what they actually were talking about, because they looked like a hurt team, and you need skill and you need tactics and you need a lot of things, but a wee bit of hurt and a wee bit of just, I suppose, desire goes a long way.
And obviously, we know the draw. It's Tyrone, Kerry, Donegal, Meath in the All-Ireland semi-finals. So we have all that to look forward to in a couple of weeks' time. And just before we move on to our interviews and hear from Maurice Brosnan, we're just going to do our weekly highlights. And Niall has sent through his. He couldn't make the pod this morning, but we still know his highlights. And Player of the Week, Mal, you've went with Shane O'Donnell for Donegal. I think he got man of the match on Saturday evening.
Yeah, he did. And to be fair, it was actually quite difficult to pick it. You Jordan Morris, I thought, was exceptional. Kieran McGeeney, Niall Morgan had a big imprint. But for me, what I always look for in somebody who's man of the match is, if it's not an exceptional performance, and the fact if somebody scored in like 110 or something, like Saoirse Gromby scored 2-4. But I just thought in the first half, whenever Donegal were struggling, Shane O'Donnell was still trying to link the play. He was still making the runs. And then whenever they started to really tick, he was involved in absolutely everything. As it says on Twitter, he was just there everywhere, man. He popped up absolutely everywhere. And you often hear players, or they're always in the media, and sometimes they don't back it up, but he's very comfortable chatting. Donegal always put him forward, but see, whenever there's something needs done on the pitch, he's at the front of the queue, and he was exceptional.
And you mentioned Saoirse Gormley there, Mal. She's been Niall's Player of the Week, and I know she's your Score of the Week as well, so we'll come to her when we come to the scores. I picked Kieran McGeeney for Tyrone. I think he's back till where he was when he won Player of the Year. He's been brilliant. I think he kicked the first 2-pointer possibly on Saturday. And yeah, the shot free from McCurry, and he kicked the 2-pointer, but he was everywhere and just working hard on that sort of dogged aggression that we were talking about when we were talking the Tyrone game. Thought he was brilliant. My result of the week, I went for Meath beating Galway. I got into this game at half time yesterday, and I think they were level, or Galway maybe a point up, and Meath were just exceptional. Now, they tried their best at a stage to throw it away, but they were brilliant in that second half. And the result, you and Niall agreed, Mal. You went for the Tyrone win over Dublin.
Yeah, it was a brilliant result for Tyrone. Like, as I say, they've been inconsistent, but they went to Croke Park. They delivered. As much as people say that Dublin missed this and Dublin that, I still felt Tyrone controlled it, and a brilliant result. And it leaves them in the last 4 of the All-Ireland. They're in the final of the minors, and they've won the under-20s. So, and the ladies are into the semi-final as well. So, what a result for Tyrone.
On my shock of the week, me and Al went for the same. We went for Armagh getting beat by Kerry, and probably not so much the result. It was just the manner of the defeat. Was the shock. And you went for Meath beating Galway as well, Mal.
Yeah, and I would agree with your thing as well. The margin was something nobody thought would come down the tracks. But my take last week is if there was a shock anywhere in the weekend, it would be Meath beating Galway would be a shock, and that's how it happened. It was an exceptional game of football. I just wish I had listened to the boy in the train coming home from Drumcondra on Saturday night. The boy from Donegal, he says, whatever you do, he says, get your money in Meath tomorrow. He says they're going to win. So I wish I had listened to him.
You know, for next time, Mal. Next time
Yeah.
he's playing. Score of the week, which we mentioned Saoirse Gormley for player of the week. Nell picked her for player of the week. You've went with her for your score of the week, Mal.
Yeah, she scored 2-4, and they're playing against like Ulster rivals from Mana, who were very much at the top of the game over this past couple of years. But thankfully, Joan Quinn had the highlights up on social media, and she literally took on the whole left-hand side of Fermanagh's defence, and she ducked and dived inside, and then she had a brilliant finish at the end of it all. And it's hard to beat a wee bit of individual brilliance. And again, she had loads of competition from another point of view. I thought Robert Finnerty's pass for Killian McDade's goal was exceptional. You know, just that vision to take out a couple of defenders, but Saoirse's all-round goal was top drawer.
And in terms of score of the week, then Niall went with Michael Langan, his goal, which we touched on when we were talking about the Donegal game, was hugely important score. And I went for David Clifford's. I think it was his first point. It was the one that broke around the middle of the field, and he chipped it up and beat 4 or 5 Armagh players himself. I think Peter Canavan highlighted it on the Sunday game last night. Just his spatial awareness and his skill for using both feet and everything was just it was a sight to behold. And young sung hero, I went for Seanie O'Shea, which I don't know if he's unsung really, but probably just in terms of the carry forward line. The Cliffords are usually the pair that, you know, catch the headlines, and Seanie O'Shea maybe is playing sort of behind them. So for him to stand up and kick 12 points yesterday, he was the difference nearly between the teams, and he kept Kerry ahead for most of the first half. I think he had 8 points in the first half. So I went with him, and Niall chose Kieran Daly for Tyrone. And Mal, you went in a different direction this week. You went for Martin McNally, the referee.
Yeah, I thought Kieran Daly was a shout, and actually Niall Devlin was in my thought process as well, because I think he did a decent job. I think he seemed to be doing like a marking job as well, possibly in Sean Bugler at times, and scored a point. But I went for Martin McNally. I thought he really added to that game, but more so, I thought he should have got the All-Ireland final last year. And I think usually if you referee a semi-final, you don't get a final. So I thought he brought a lot to that game, and he let a lot of things go. And he, as I say, he added to entertainment value. And I'm sure he hopes he doesn't get a phone call in the next couple of weeks to get a semi-final, because if he doesn't, there's a good chance he'll get the final.
So that's our highlights of the week. We're going to hear now from our 3 interviews. We're going to hear Michael Langan from Donegal, Malachy O'Rourke from Tyrone, and Kieran McGeeney from Armagh. We're going to have a short break, and we're going to hear from our sponsors as well, Hastings Hotels, and then we're going to hear from Maurice Brosnan. He caught up with Mal at Croke Park yesterday. So that's all we have for today, folks. We'll be back on Thursday with another podcast. So we'll speak to everybody then.
Thanks, Sean.
Michael, your 100th appearance for Donegal, a big day for you. How did you feel it was out there?
Yeah, look, obviously delighted to get the win out there today. I mean, we didn't have a great performance in the first half, but delighted to turn around the second half and get a win. And we've 2 weeks to look forward to now to a semi-final, so that's great.
Yeah, 7 points down at half time, and it wasn't looking good. Was there panic stages in the dressing room, or was there calm?
No, look, I don't think there was panic stages, but look, definitely a few harsh words heard, and we weren't happy with what happened in the first half, and a few things we had to iron out at half time. And look, with the way the game goes now and the new rules and everything, I think you have huge momentum swings. So once we got a goal and it tagged on a few points, it really helped us. So delighted to come out to win there in the second half.
Yeah, it was really important. You got a strong start to the second half and didn't let them build up. I think you got the first three points, and that really got you back motoring again.
Yeah, look, as I say, with 3 points to the left and only 4 in it, you're only a kick of a ball away then. So it was important to get a strong start in the second half there, because if they had tagged on a couple of points, they'd have been out of sight. So once we got a good start, the confidence came back, and we were able to tag on a couple of more points and get the win. So delighted.
Talk us through that goal, because Rory Began's not an easy man to beat. He took a pass from Michael Murphy and let her rip.
Yeah, look, I think we've been chatting about it all week in the last couple of weeks to keep it low and hard when you do get in there, and I think it's on the opposite of that, high and hard. But look, just delighted to see it hit the back of the net, and there was a Barton score, so delighted.
Yeah, and the team pushed on after that. Like when I suppose Monaghan, their decision making maybe started to let them down, and when you sensed you could get on top, you really pushed home.
Yeah, we did. Look, I think Monaghan had maybe a few ways or a few jobs shorts, and that really sucks momentum out of you. And we were getting scores at the other end, and it was massive for us. And yeah, once we got level and got ahead, then we really had a momentum, and we had real confidence, and it was great to see it out there in the end. So, great day.
Yeah, 100th appearance. I think 2017 maybe the debut was made. Did you think then that you'd make it to the ton?
No, I don't think it's anything you're thinking about, and it's probably not anything I've thought about till maybe earlier this year, until it was mentioned that I was close. So no, look, it's special. Look, any day you get to put on the Donegal jersey, it's special, and even to put it on one time is great, but 100 times is really special. So it's a really proud day for, I suppose, my family and my club as well. So delighted.
Yeah, a big day for your family. They go all over the country with you, like, so I'm sure they're delighted.
Yeah, they do. They travel all around, and it was nice. I got to see them there over the bottom of the Hoga stand just after the game and share a moment with them. So that's special and something you look back on with fondness, definitely.
Yeah. So 2 weeks to a big semi-final. You were there last year. Didn't go to plan, but you'll be hoping to take one more step.
Yeah, definitely. Look, we've I think 2 weeks now to get ready, and it was tough, the quick turnaround, 6 days. But we've 2 weeks to get right now, and we'll get the bodies refreshed and do our analysis, and we'll be good to go whoever comes out the other side. So looking forward to that.
Thank you very much for your time, Michael.
We came down here today expecting to put on a big performance and expecting to win the game, but that's you can talk all you want about that. It doesn't always come to fruition, but just delighted to get through it. I thought the first half, it was obviously a cagey enough game. We weren't at our best, but we got into half time still leading by a point, and we felt that we could be better in the second half. I thought our urgency all around the field was better in the second half. I think in the first half we there was a number of unforced errors. They were able to turn us over. We weren't as effective when they were attacking, so it was a case of trying to, I suppose, put more pressure on other players out the field, and just work it had up a wee bit, and then when we get the chances being clinical, and I suppose that's the way it worked out in the end. It wasn't a case that we came and said, look, we're going to go for 2 pointers, but we have a number of lads who are good at shooting from distance, and it just opened up, and the boys backed themselves to score. But there was no doubt it had a big impact in the first half. It meant that we went in leading by a point, but we had 4 2-pointers, which is massive. So look at it. It was one that worked well for us today. I'm not sure we didn't get any in the second half, but look at there's no doubt it had a big impact in the final score. We did feel that we would have plenty of energy, and I think in the second half we pushed up stronger on the kickouts, and we turned them over a few times. And then we were prepared to go to the final whistle. That was the, I suppose, attitude coming here, and it was great. Then just, I suppose, Owen coming on, Rory coming on, kicked a couple of great scores as well. So it just gave us that wee bit of breathing space, and we finished the game really strong. Look at all the boys are working really hard, so you're more than happy to throw them in at any stage. And just as fellas were getting tired, Owen with his pace, and that was very good, and then Rory with his movement, and the two of them are very accurate, and they're confident from the post. So it was a great time to introduce them. But no, overall delighted. We've used a lot of different players, and with injury and different things, a number of fellas came in, but all the panellists working really hard, and we're more than happy to throw different fellas in when we see fit, depending on who's coming off and things like that. So no, delighted for them all. And it's a lovely balance to have the likes of PD and Matty, and maybe Kieran McGeeney wouldn't want me bringing him into that bracket, but Kieran's an experienced player as well, and just to sort of have that level-headedness in the middle of the chaos, just to make sure that keeping other fellas right, and to use the ball well, and things like that. But as well as that, the two lads among the panel, they're great role models. The way they have prepared, and the way they've applied themselves over a number of years, it's really good, and it rubs off on the other younger fellas coming through. So it's great that they're still there, they're still able to do it, and long may it continue.
Yeah, it was probably disappointing 15 minutes. That's what turned the tide. I think they had 13 points from the trot, with 15. So yeah, it was disappointing. They played well. Even in the end, they kept on going. In fairness, and Shane had to pull off 3 saves off the line, but they never stopped fighting. So you have to give them credit. It was just a 15-minute period, where Kerry were devastating, and we just couldn't get our hands on the ball in the middle. So Yeah, we probably made life difficult for ourselves on top of that. So, but listen, you know that's sport, and you have to take your hat off. Like when somebody's are scoring like that, there, like it's just one of those days you make the mistakes and you get punished for them. I think it was 11 out of our 13 kickouts we lost. If you're going to do that, like in this game, because you have then to commit for it and you're leaving holes behind us, and listen, it's just one of those days. Shawnee, no matter what he hit, was putting them over, and then like everybody else was joining in. So yeah, it's a 15 minutes you'd like to forget, but it happens in sport. We've done it ourselves to other teams, so it's you just have to take it on the chin. Everybody will make something. Like for the first 45 minutes, we were very well on top, but the only thing the time to be on top really is at the end. So it's just one of those days, is it? I know. Listen, they've won All-Ireland. There's only one or two teams in like 140 odd years that have won it, and they can hold their heads up high. Surely, they've been one of the most consistent teams over the last 3 or 4 years. And in today, with Galway and ourselves, it's you get a few years to sort of push to the top, and you have to make the best of it. For most counties outside of those two, it's just one of those things. I think because between Dublin and Kerry, they've 80% participation in All-Ireland finals and won 50% of them. So you're up against a huge thing, but they've held their own. It's going to be disappointing for them today, but they've got an All-Ireland medal in their back pocket, and I'm sure those younger fellas there, and most of that squad, will want to push on and try and get another one.
Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, will make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
Joined for this part of the podcast by Maurice Brosnan from the Irish Examiner, and there's 4 names left in the hat, Maurice, but one of them isn't Armagh. They were completely bossed out of that game in the second half, is how I saw it. What about yourself?
I agree, yeah. I suppose the first thing to say is we're sitting here upstairs in Croke Park and looking down the pitch a couple of minutes ago, and you see just stalwarts come out and look a small bit emotional, and maybe it was pretty evident that they were looking around them and taking this in, and geez, they've been an awesome team, and I think history will remember them fondly regardless of what happens next. But geez, Matt, I don't know about you, I have not seen a stretch of football like the 15 minutes we saw from Kerry in that second half there in a long time. It was an absolute mauling. They really just conquered Eaton Rafferty's kickouts, a tactical masterclass by Cian O'Neill, and the rest of the Kerry management obviously, but the way that they just completely choked them there and went from, it's effectively 13 points in 13 minutes when you include the 2-pointers. It was absolutely astonishing. That spell was right up there. I think about the levels of football we've seen this year, the Ulster final would definitely come to mind. Donegal's phenomenal stretch against Meath yesterday, but that was as good as it gets. When Kerry clicked like that and just took over, you could kind of see how powerless Armagh were to stop it. And it's hard. You're watching what are you supposed to do here? It was just frightening. So that was the decisive spell. It was you can call it the clutch spell, despite the fact that Armagh didn't go away and they kept plugging away. But when that spell came, it was just it was awesome.
Shawnee O'Shea and David Clifford, I think they scored 19 between them or something like that, which is colossal. But there was a lot of hunger in that. I know you're talking about the kickouts, but Kerry were just absolutely ravenous in everything.
Yeah,
and that's without Diarmuid O'Connor and the much debated scene about their midfield and talk about Jack Barry and all these things, and it was an absolute control. And
you could take that every way you wanted. Paul Gainey not being brought on because of an injury. You mentioned Diarmuid O'Connor losing Thomas Sullivan as early as he did. Did anybody nationally really know who Evan Looney was before today? I would say no. Maybe the club's elites, guys who watched Dr. Croke's run last year, would say that fella had something about him, but more broadly than that, and they all just made their mark in absolutely incredible fashion. I have to say, when that spell comes, you see Kerry at their best. It's Paddy Clifford kicked the point that brought it back to 1. Then David Clifford, his first 4 shots scores a point, drops one short, misses two. His next 4 shots, scores 6 points, like 2 2-pointers and 2 1s. It's just.
And it was him who put them ahead.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. With an absolutely incredible 2-point. Sean O'Shea starts like a house on fire, kicks 8 points in the first half. You can see that Armagh are really on that. So then he wheels onto his left and kicks 2-pointer with his left. I mean, that is just, it's talent, it's expertise, it's everything that came when it comes at once like that. It's such an impressive thing. I think Armagh got caught in that storm, and I mean, you'd have to. I know it's going to be no comfort to them, but you kind of have to hold your hands up and say that was just a level of football that's so hard to deal with.
In the very first few moments of the game, Darren McMullen pulled a sort of a half chance wide here at the Davin end. Tiernan Kelly went through one time and he had a couple of men either side. There was possibly a certain goal. Could that have changed it, do you feel?
The Tiernan Kelly chance is the one. I was stunned at. That is not everything we've heard of this Armagh team and the we, not me, and all of that. I was stunned that he didn't. It's Oisin Connolly on your left shoulder, square that ball. I was really surprised that he pulled the trigger like that. Now they got a point out of it, I appreciate, but yeah, that was a huge goal chance. I thought the start of the second half, maybe some of their slightly lax shooting. Ben Creeley the chance to make it 6 up at one stage. Now Grimmy had 3 shots, 3 wides. So I mean that conversion thing, but that's not the dominant takeaway for me. Is that stretch and how hard it was to just try and get anything to stop the bleed basically, and they just couldn't do it. They got caught, and Kerry got them in their teeth and they wouldn't let go.
And even there's a point at half time, Armagh won up at half time, weren't they? They were
1 up, yeah.
But then they went 5 up in the first 5 minutes. And Kerry's team talk would have been probably targeting that early stage. And for them to wrestle it back, it's like Armagh were looking sort of comfortable at that point.
Yeah, I thought they were 40 minutes in. I was saying Armagh are the better team, even still at that stage. That they how it was basically that 5-minute stretch just before half time when they started to really exert their own control of the game. There was the moment with the hooter where they just weighed it down, got that back out. Were very, very patient with that attack, worked a great point, came back out the start of the second half. I thought Joe McElroy got on a mountain of ball and started to push on. But that's the thing about this game, teams actually don't, the less kickouts they have of their own, the better. They don't want, it's just so hard, so much easier on opposition's kick out to get on top and to apply that squeeze and go. This is what happened to Kerry against Meads. It was actually their own kick that they were struggling on, so they wanted to get ball up the other end of the pitch and try and keep it there, and that's what they did. Once they dug in during that stretch and managed to just find a way to, and even despite all that, I'm just thinking back on it here, in the middle of that, the thing that slightly breaks this tide, I mean, you're talking about the damaged burst at that stage, but it was a 45, but that was a goal chance for Andrew Mernon just before it that he pulled and just went out. So yeah, I mean, it's been a consistent thing, and I've covered a lot of Armagh games this year, and Kieran McGeeney has referenced a lot their inability to take goal chances, and I think it will be something to look back on today. Albeit, I go back to that point, the decider of this game was that third quarter absolute wonder stretch.
The other game today, we're obviously an Ulster podcast, but Galway and Meath was a poor first half, amazing second half. You're a Galway man, it's probably difficult to take the manner of that, because you were 6 down, then 3 up, and then you're gone. And
I mean, I'm sure, we've had, myself and yourself have had this conversation a lot over the last couple of years about your window, and when the party's there and when the party's over. And I mean, maybe this is too downbeat right now, but I think Galway are looking at the window was closing here. The window was, they had the chance to win All-Irelands. This team had the chance to win All-Irelands, 2 All-Ireland finals in the last couple of years, and didn't take them. And you see how many things need to go right to get to that stage. And I think it's a crushing thing for that group today. Despite they will be devastated by the way they lost that game, but it's as a collective how close they came and how hard it is to get back up that mountain. I think that would be a real sore point. For me, when I was looking at those Armagh down there today afterwards, when their window came, they went and got it done, and nothing else matters. Regardless of what happens next, they have a medal in their pocket that they can carry with them for the rest of their lives. They have recognition for what they achieved as a group. That's phenomenal. And I mean, it will just be one of the sporting regrets of that Galway team's lives if they don't get that, and there's every chance they won't. That's how cruel this game is. Despite how good they are, how close they came to Armagh on all those occasions, they didn't go and get it done. And that was the thing that I left thinking about today is, oh man, there's just going to be a lot of hurt around, not just today, but the last couple of years.
And people watching at home maybe didn't appreciate Jordan Morris. He absolutely electrified this place.
Yeah, and
every time he got the ball, it lit up.
But isn't it? It's what a testament to the FRC that players can go out and Jordan Morris. I mentioned the David Clifford. His first 4 shots misses 3. Jordan Morris, his first 3 shots misses all 3, and comes out of a game with 1-6. Like
because he went for a 2-pointer that we were talking about.
This game used to be. If he got 3 shots in a game, he'd probably be content. You know, that's the manner of a thing. And so I thought that was a credit to him. Now he had so many kind of crowning moments. That lovely dummy bounce is just an absolute nightmare. At one stage he scored a point into the hill away from us here, and he turned his marker Johnny McGrath inside out twice. Like he actually, you know, defenders, they never want to have their back turned. They certainly don't have their back turned to a player twice. So he is just so difficult to keep a leash on. There's a bit of character about him too. I liked the on his knees in front of the hill celebrating was cool to see. So yeah, that was, I mean, a standout prospect. That game is really intriguing for me now to see. Like Meath have a couple of the elements you have to have against Donegal, in particular pace, like absolute raw pace. I thought Monaghan, who are no mean feat in that regard either, but really struggled with that man-on-man system that they play. As soon as one started to flag, it was just a cascade effect elsewhere, and I don't see Meath struggling in the same way. So two cracking semi-finals to look forward to.
Yeah, and I suppose that leads me into yesterday. Like Monaghan, I remember looking up at the scoreboard and they had 1:15 on the board at half time, and like they'd left quite a bit behind as well, so they were in some position.
Oh, they were in, I mean, at that stage when they no more than today, like they get that final attack for the Hooter and bomb of a kick by Roy Begg, just a clutch point. And they are bounding down the tunnel. Like I can imagine the mood they were in. A couple of things I thought were interesting. Jimmy Guinness is, I'm sure most people would have heard his post-match conference and comments in relation to the statement at this stage. But before that, from a football perspective, what he said was interesting too. I mean, he was adamant we changed nothing. Like we knew exactly what Monaghan were going to bring. We knew how they'd set up. They trusted in their 2-point shooting ability, and we knew exactly what we needed to do. So he was adamant they changed nothing, which I think is interesting because, like, who's he talking to there? He's talking to us, obviously. He's also talking to his players in that we told you this was going to happen. Like we told, you know, he's reinforcing you see McGuinness, the psychologist, in a moment like that. And in fairness to him, like that is, you know, what we saw today was a level above it in my opinion. But that stretch by Donegal was absolutely ferocious too. Like when they, you know, from the Langan goal, Michael Murphy again, a guy who you know, he kicks 3 wides, was turned over for what could have been a Stephen O'Hanlon goal. First kick, big long kick from the throw-in into him, and they didn't win that. But yet still, he's breaking kickouts down on top of Langan for Washington Gallant's first point. He creates the goal, and an absolute rasper of a goal. And you see both O'Donnells during that stretch start to absolutely fly. Paddy Mogan gets up, gets the second point. Patrick McBrearty, I thought the best he's looked in ages when he came in. Like really was playing with a kind of a controlled anger that definitely was a huge benefit. And it's a similar thing for Monaghan. They were just caught in an absolute vice grips. Now, instead of the difference between what happened to Armagh today and Monaghan yesterday is that Monaghan will look back on that stretch and see they still have chances. They actually, I think they kick 8 shots. They kicked their first, I'm not looking at this now live, but I'm pretty sure it was they kicked 3 points out of 3 with their first 3 attacks in the second half, and then it's 8 missed in a row. So that includes like Roy Beggan's 2-point free hits the post, drops, and even still you have a chance to salvage a 1, but Andrew Woods hooks it wide. So that more so than what happened. Armagh couldn't get their hands on the ball. Monaghan actually did even that part. They got that right. So I think there will be huge regret about the fact that those couple of chances that start to slip away. Ryan McInnesby gets injured. Micheál Bannigan hooks a wild 2-point shot. Jack McCarron is another similar one, and suddenly you're just starts to slip very fast.
And finally, Tyrone against Dublin. At one stage in the second half, it felt like Tyrone were completely in control, and then Stephen Cluxton has a chance to put Dublin 1 ahead. There's so many elements. It
was an absolutely bizarre game. That's the game I find hardest to articulate after the weekend, or even get a sense of. I guess maybe I need to watch it back, but I thought both teams were wildly inaccurate. When we went down for the post-match press conference after the first game on Saturday, it was the other side of the ground, so you're walking around the tunnel where the bus drives in Croke Park, and you can see directly out onto the pitch. And I remember just looking out the tunnel maybe 10 minutes before throwing and seeing rain hop off. It looked like a great day, but just there was a quick burst, a shower at that stage, and it never really dawned on me until I came back up and saw the pitch was like an ice rink. Like there was people slipping everywhere. I think that led to that level of accuracy led to wayward shooting. It led to, some of the turnovers were, there was a stretch here in the second half where Conor Patrick turned over the ball in front of the Cusack stand, and it was, you have it back, no you have it back, no you have it back. It was like a game of table tennis. Despite all that, I don't think Tyrone played well, but they've so many positives to bring away, no more so than the spot they're in, but also the fact that when they needed a punch from the bench, they got it. And you want to talk about pace, I thought O'Mackinnon looked so dangerous every time he came onto the ball. I thought their entire half-forward line really imposed themselves on that game. Like Matty Donnelly he's such a great conductor of what's going on around him. If I had told you that Davy Byrne would probably win his matchup with Darren McCurry, I think you would say, oh geez, Tyrone might be in trouble here, and they weren't. Like they were, to the extent where it was actually Dublin who really unravelled coming down the home straight. So I think Tyrone are in a great spot in that their performance wasn't super, but they have a lot of things that they can bank in that came through it. And the best thing for these four teams, you think about the sense of anticipation that came around last week. You've got four counties who know now there's more to come. Like that should be part of this that we should revel in. Like the fact that you're there, you're in the frame. All four of those teams have a cast iron belief that they can win on Ireland, and I think that's a great thing for the game.
And finally on that Tyrone game, like now Niall Morgan's control of it from day one. I was on the hill and haven't watched it back yet. You were watching it up here, but it just seemed as if he was able to do what he wanted with the kickouts, and he obviously was able to do that.
So yeah, I think, go back to my point earlier about like coming through adversity. I would say if you asked Niall Morgan before yesterday, I don't know would he be content with his form. Like it had been.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
A bit kind of patchy, and like what a credit to him, like as a player, that you rock up the biggest game of your year in Croke Park and put on an exhibition like that. Just after all of what's come behind him, it's actually, to me, it's nearly more. I'm more impressed that Jordan Morris finished the game he would there today because he made the mistakes earlier and came through that. Similar thing with David Clifford. You're going to face adversity in sport as well as everywhere else, and you're going to have to try and persist through that. And Mike Morgan just found his range there I thought he had. There was to the extent where what has been Dublin's rock for the last couple of weeks was their midfield, and he just had them on strings. Really, he was able to work his way through it in really impressive fashion. So what a contrast in kickouts that we saw from yesterday to today, and maybe that's to do with the conditions, I don't really know. But yeah, to answer your question, like he looked back to the form that we know he's capable of, the All-Star Niall Morgan, and that is such an incredible plus for Malachy O'Rourke.
And the right time of the year to be doing it. Maurice, thanks a million for your time. And
anytime.
Chat soon.